Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Oh my goodness.
Hi.
I cannot believe I'm officially doing this live. Like I've thought about, women making an impact, and I've done the recorded series where I just, did the Zoom record and then obviously post it, but it's so fantastic to actually have it live and to come
Yeah,
on have a live conversation, which is great. So I want to welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining me. This is Women Making an Impact Live. I'm your host, Salita Roberts, founder of Style to Impact, an image coaching and personal styling agency geared towards women empowerment through style. So that's why we're here today. My goal is to give women the clarity, confidence, and closet they need to increase their influence, impact, and income. So, thank you very much for joining me today. And I have a very, 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 very special guest, someone who I've had the privilege of knowing. What is it like? I don't think it's been 6 months since I've known you.
yeah.
It's been less than 6 months, but it's been a fantastic journey just being a
Aw.
part of your orbit and learning
Oh,
from
thank
you
you.
and just learning from the entire Speaking Your Brand company. But today we are talking about women, the power of women's voices and how speaking up can help us change the narrative. So I'm going to introduce my guest today. Thank you all very much for joining. This is Miss Diane Diaz. She's a speaking coach and personal brand strategist with Speaking Your Brand, whose mission is to help more women develop the communication skills, platform, and confidence to step into thought leadership, influence, and power on stage, in the media, in business, on the boardroom, and in politics, because through women's stories, voices, and visibility, that it is through women's stories, voices, and visibility that we can change the status quo and change existing systems to benefit more people. And that is important, being able to have that visibility that we need, having the voice to speak up on things that really matters to us, and so that we can change all the systems that not necessarily in line with, bringing forth the better and good side of society. So thank you very much for joining me, Diane. It's a pleasure having you today.
It is such a pleasure to be here, Salita. I'm so excited that this is live now and excited to be the first one live.
Yes, it's longing me. When you have that desire, that burning desire to do something, and it
Yeah.
just keeps nudging at you. And it's been something that's been nudging at me for a while, because I keep saying that my brand is women empowerment through style, right?
Mhm.
It's not just, and I felt that sense of I need to have these type of conversations,
Yeah.
because I'm not your stylist who tells you, okay, wear this, put this on, and go out and look pretty. But it's to be able to use what you wear to communicate certain things about yourself, right? To be able
Right.
to give you the voice and the confidence that you need to step into those spaces. So I wanted my brand to represent the things that I believe in as well. Women empowerment, that's something that I'm big on. It's not to marginalize anyone else, but to amplify our voices, to get us into those spaces, to be confident enough to tell our stories, to be confident enough to talk about the things that others may not necessarily want to talk about. We talk about it in groups, but we don't necessarily broadcast it outwards. And I know
Right.
we were having a conversation offline about sisterhood and really
Yes.
being around each other. Like, share your thoughts on that. How can we as women really support each other, especially in those difficult moments?
Yeah, our conversation was very interesting because we both kind of unbeknownst to each other ended up at the same kind of thought
Yep.
through different situations. But this idea that, when I think okay, I'm 54, so over the course of my lifetime, and I know I'm not unusual in this, but, and I've been in many different positions at companies, corporate sort of positions, and been talked over by men and been sort of meant to, or communicated to, not in so many words, to stay in my place and to
Yep.
stay small, right, and not speak up. So I think that now is the time when we should be speaking up. And the sisterhood is, I think, about championing each other and supporting each other. So, for example, if you're in a meeting where one of your female colleagues is saying something, and this has been my experience, it's happened to me, I can't even count how many times where I've said something, and I actually had an instance a long time ago where a male colleague basically said what I said was stupid. I was like, what?
Wow.
Like literally said that. This was at a previous job a very long time ago. But imagine if a female colleague spoke up and said, actually, hold on a second. Let's hear what she has to say, and let's kind of think about that, because it was a good point. Or if we, reiterated what a female colleague said, or shared out what they share on social media, and we support one another in that way. And I think, it helps to amplify one another's voices, and also lets those who want us to stay small know that that's not happening anymore. That's not how this is going to work, right?
Absolutely. I think that's where I'm like, where the direction I would love these conversations to go into. It's not about, because sometimes we feel alone in the spaces that we're in, right?
Yeah.
We feel alone whether or not, we're working in a company or we're working in an institution that doesn't support us, whether or not that's our mental health, that's whether or not it's our family and it doesn't support us. But there are other women within the institution that feels the same way. But instead of us coming together and really saying, you know what, as a group, as a collective, how can we change this, right? And when one person speaks up, it's not to, oh, well, have fun with that. It's like, okay, she spoke up. She's given me the somewhat authority to then say, I can do the same, right? It's just putting yourself where one person steps up and you have the confidence now to really say, yes, I'm going to support you. But we also know that as much as in a perfect world, that's what we would like, but it's not always something that happens. And I think more of these conversations is needed to be able to change that. But when it comes to like a woman, we're talking about women's voices. What are some of the impact that you've seen that so far women has been able to change certain things? Because I know we're talking about being able to not only tell our stories, but we want to be able to get into the workplace. We want to be able to start our own businesses and have where we are commanding and we're really not just supporting each other, but we have a space and a place within society.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think there, of course, at Speaking Your Brand, one of the things we talk about is this idea of thought leadership. And I think as more women come to see themselves as thought leaders, which everybody is a thought leader, frankly, everybody has some unique area of expertise that they bring to the table. So when you can start to look at yourself as a thought leader and start to put out a message that way, so whether it's on social media, whether it's in your job, in a meeting, when you present an idea as a thought leader in that area of expertise, I think not only does it shift how you're perceived by other people, but I think for the woman herself, it shifts how you look at yourself, right? And it sort of elevates sort of your, do I see myself as an employee? Now, listen, there's nothing wrong with if you just are just an employee and you don't want to be, it doesn't mean thought leadership doesn't mean you have to be in a leadership role. Yes. But if you are not comfortable yet doing that, that's okay. There's no shame in that. However, if you have certain goals you want to achieve, when you start to shift how you look at yourself and you start to think of yourself as a thought leader versus just, being in whatever role you're in, it's going to help you to put yourself out there more, to ask for more challenging roles, to speak up for other women and support them, right? And to get your voice out there in a way that not only helps you in your career, but frankly, it's just going to help other women too.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I share that same sentiment. It's not about us like in your own spaces, like, okay, this is what I want to have. These are some of the accomplishments that I want to have for myself. Yeah, that's great to have those goals, but looking at the bigger picture is to how can we change this? And for those women, that have kids and especially girls, it's like, do we want the same challenges that we experience continue on to our kids, or do we want to make the changes now or as much as we can, because things may not necessarily change as soon as we do it, but start putting the steps in place to be able to change the narrative and change how women are viewed in the workplace and how we show up. And I think thought leadership is a great way of doing that, because then you start thinking about you start thinking about society. You start thinking outside of yourself and see
Yes.
what are some of my talents, what are some of my stories that I can share that can help another woman or help someone else coming up in this space, that can really give them the confidence that they need. Because quite frankly, I don't know about you, confidence is not something that I was born with. Confidence is something that on a daily basis I have to practice. Like my trick is, even for this conversation, is not to be, this is going to sound weird, but not to be too much in the moment, because I find when I'm in the moment, I'm overthinking, like, okay, am I doing it right? Am I looking this way? Am I looking that way? Am I doing this? Because as women, we tend to do that. We tend to overemphasize. We have to look at everything, make sure that it's working right and everything is going good, instead of just have the conversation, talk about what's important to you. There are some persons who are going to like it, and then there's some persons who are not going to support that. How do you deal with issues in that instance where you're speaking up as a woman and you're raising your voice, especially on topics that are not necessarily in some corners highly supported or view as, we don't want to talk about this, we know some issues exist, but we don't necessarily want to talk about this in the public? How do you deal with that, and how do you encourage women to really step out into that space?
That's such a good question. And I think, so just to back up a little bit, I think you made a good point about, this fear of speaking up, and speaking out. And I think, and kind of staying small. And I think that just comes, let's just be real. It's patriarchy, right? We as women were never, first of all, we weren't even allowed to speak up. I'm 54. So my mom had me at a very late age. She had me when she was 42. So she was born in 1924. And so she came up during a time when women had no rights. And then even once she was married, she couldn't have her own checking account. She couldn't have her own money. She couldn't have her own, credit. She had nothing, right? And so, you weren't able to speak up because you did not have some of the basic rights. So to speak up could really jeopardize what you did have, right?
Exactly.
So I think we've and not to say that everything is, all hunky dory now, because we do have, obviously we have more rights and everything, but we're constantly, I think we've all been ingrained, all of us. And even I see this even in women in younger age groups, we've been conditioned by the patriarchy to sort of defer to men, right? And I don't want this to sound like I'm bashing men, because I'm absolutely not doing that. I just think this is a system that this is the system within which we operate. And I think to recognize it as such helps us understand why it is so important to speak up. So I think that idea of speaking up, you mentioned you didn't always have confidence, and it's constantly, a work in progress. And it does over time, your confidence grows. So when you do things like this, Salita, and for everybody out there, when you take that chance and you put your voice out there, yes, you are going to sometimes have haters or people who don't agree. But here's the thing about that, two things. First of all, the people who are the quote unquote haters, or the people who don't agree with what you're saying, they're not your audience. And that's okay, because I like to talk about personal branding a lot, but every single brand, I don't care whether it's your personal brand or a national product brand like a Coca-Cola or a BMW or any of those brands, every brand has the people they want to attract and the people they're going to repel. Your personal brand's the same thing. So when you put information out there that's not a good fit for some people because it's too much and it's too, supportive of something you believe in, and they don't align with it, that's okay. They're not your audience. So, you can address what they're saying back to you or not, but, you I think that the second thing about that is it actually is going to build more confidence, because the more you speak your truth, and first of all, finding out what that truth is, and then the more you share that truth, you're going to actually attract more people to that align with it. That's going to build your confidence. And then they're going to help to amplify your message and get your voice out there even more. So I think if you don't put your message out there, you're never going to find that support, because people aren't going to know what to support, right? So I think it's really important to speak out about things like that. You know, I do a lot of work in the area of women's empowerment, and, you know, on a personal level, I share things about causes that I care about, like domestic violence, because I was raised in a domestic violence situation. And if people disagree with me, I've just learned to say, well, okay, that's too bad. But, you know, it doesn't bother me, because I know my truth, and I know there's plenty of people who will support me. That's another reason why it's so important to support one another.
Yeah, that's like, Diane, you just kind of like put it all together there, because that's how I feel about sharing your truth, being authentic to what your message is. You know, don't get on because sometimes this is where the disconnect is, that we see something popular that's happening and we jump on it. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to have this conversation. We jump on it, but it's not authentically you. You don't believe in the things that you're sharing.
Right.
And I think once you start to believe, and not just start to believe, once you believe in the things that you're sharing, yes, there are going to be you know, spaces that you get into that persons are not going to be supporting you, but then you're going to find your tribe and you're going to find your group. And I think when we talk about women empowerment and sisterhood, it's not, honestly, it's my biggest pet peeve when women get on spaces where instead of uplifting another woman, they, you know, it's like challenge what she's saying. If I'm saying, you know, I think within the work environment that I am in, that I should be paid X, Y, and Z, why our first reaction to that woman is, why you think you should be making that amount, right? It shouldn't be that way, right? It should be like, okay, let's look at what your strengths are. Let's look at, you know, why you think that way. And if there's certain ways that we can support, okay, instead of putting your message this way, because all of us are not going to have that messaging and that wording correctly, because some of us will say it as it is, and some of us need to, you know, a little bit more eloquent in what we say. So whenever you find, I think whenever I find someone, like a woman saying something that, okay, that's a bit, it's like, let's have a conversation about it, because you don't know where she's coming from on that. You don't know what her experiences are, right? So I think it's so important that we come together, support each other. I know I'm saying it on LinkedIn. I hate but I don't like seeing women bringing down another woman, right? We can share our opinions. We all have perspective. We all have point of view on different topics. But at the same time, it's like, can we look at the bigger picture? That's my thing. Can we look at the bigger picture? Because when I'm able to negotiate for the things that I want, have the confidence to do that, to walk into boardrooms and say, whether or not it's predominantly male or a mixture, it doesn't matter. It's you having the confidence to go into that room and say, hey, I have a question, or I have a comment, or I have a concern, and you put your hands up, instead of, oh, I don't want to say anything because I may come across as this, or, you know, people will view me as this. So instead of expressing what you really and truly believe in, you're holding yourself back, right? And which is all kind of like tied to the work that I do with my clients. It's like, when you get dressed, it's about your message, and it's about giving you the confidence to get into that space to say, you know, because if we look at women every day being judged.
Oh, yes.
In every aspect of our lives.
Oh, yes.
Every single aspect. And there's some women who cannot deal with the pressure of it, because it's a lot, right? When someone comes at you for no particular reason, and when you're trying your best. So here's it, you're thinking about developing your thought leadership. You have a story, you have a message, but you're holding yourself back for fear of being criticized. Like, who are you to even speak on this topic. I mean, I felt that way as well. And this is something I want to, have your opinion on when it comes to imposter syndrome. Because I felt I was like, who am I to even do this, right? Who am I to interview women on, women empowerment and have a voice in a space where when I look around, it's sometimes more senior women or women just going through certain experiences. It's like, who am I to do that?
Yeah.
When really and truly, you don't necessarily have to go through some things to really have a voice, but it's just about realizing where the challenges are and where the gaps are and where the conversations need to happen, and step into that space of saying, okay, I raised my hand, I'm going to be the one that's going to have that voice. So how do you deal with imposter syndrome? And I mean, that's something that women deal with a lot, and as a result, not able to speak up.
Oh, yes. Yes. And I will say, again, and I hate to harp on this. No, I don't. I'm going to harp on it. I feel, then this is my opinion, I don't think it's wholly wrong, though. I feel that imposter syndrome is, again, comes from the system within which we all have to work that was not designed for us, right? I mean, let's be real. The working world was designed by men for men. Yes. I mean, those are just facts because women didn't used to work, right?
Exactly.
Or outside the home in a job. We've always worked. We know that. But so I think imposter syndrome comes from all the judgments that happen because we are within a system that wasn't created for us or by us. And the judgments are numerous, not only the judgments from, a woman in a male-dominated industry or a woman speaking up, but also judgments in the other regard. Oh, a woman with children and working, and she shouldn't be working. She should be taking care of whatever the judgments are. They come both ways, right? You literally cannot win no matter what you're doing.
Exactly.
So I think imposter syndrome is a tough one because what I will say is, again, I've been in business a very long time. I've never found a way to 100% rid myself of imposter syndrome. It literally is always there. Now, sometimes it's easier to deal with than other times, but there's an expression, this isn't my expression, but it's new level, new devil. So even women who get to the highest levels of success, the Oprah Winfrey's, the Kamala Harris's, right? They still, I am certain, go to do something where there's a little voice in the back of their head going, I don't know if this is the right thing. And am I really worthy? Do I really know what I'm doing? And everybody has that. I think the difference is and I don't know if this just comes with, well, I think it probably comes with age and as your confidence grows, as you get older, typically your confidence grows, but it also comes with other people supporting you, which is another place that sisterhood comes into play, but doing it anyway, right? So, is it scary? Was it scary the first time I spoke on a big stage to 600 people? It was terrifying. Yeah. But you know what? I did it anyway. Now, I will say, one of the reasons why I did it anyway was because I did have the support of Carol Cox at Speaking Your Brand. At that time, I think I just started working for her, but she also helped me with my talk. She was at my talk. She was 100% supporting me. And I knew that, right? And so I had the support of someone who, even though I had one little Diane on my shoulder going, you can't do this. You don't know what you're talking about. You shouldn't be on the stage. You're not whatever, then I also had Carol there telling me I could do it and all of those things. So that's another important part of supporting other women is that you give them the confidence to push past the imposter syndrome. Because again, imposter syndrome will almost always be there to some degree because society tells us we aren't good enough. We aren't smart enough. We aren't pretty enough. We aren't thin enough. We aren't tall enough. We aren't short enough. We aren't enough, exactly. Right? We always aren't something enough. I come from, again, a background of domestic violence. My parents didn't have very much money. Neither one of them went to college. My father was very abusive. My mother did the best she could. She was the daughter of Italian immigrants. She had nothing. She couldn't leave him because she didn't do that back then. And so I grew up in a space of zero confidence, I was painfully shy. Obviously, I'm not anymore, but I was painfully shy. So I had a lot of things there telling me that I wasn't enough all the time. And so I think when we start to support one another, you can push past imposter syndrome. Also, if you suffer from imposter syndrome, seek out women who are confident, connect with them. I think when you surround yourself with confident people, it starts to show you what you might be able to do. And then you can try things. I would also say, if you're scared of doing something, do it anyway, because I used to joke with it when I worked in land development. I had a marketing assistant. I used to joke with my marketing assistant and say, you know, virtually nobody ever dies in marketing. So if you make a mistake, really nobody has, but I used to joke with her and say, virtually nobody dies. If you make a mistake, it's okay. So whatever it is you want to do, unless it truly is something death-defying, but speaking on a stage isn't going to kill you. It might feel like it's going to, but I guarantee you can do it even if you're scared. Yeah. So when you have a message that you want to put out there, it might be scary, but just try to do it anyway and see what you get back from it. I can almost guarantee you that feedback you get is going to make you feel so much more empowered. I know that was a long-winded answer to your question.
Oh no, that was beautiful. It's okay. It's okay. We're here to have these conversations. And I mean, as you said, it's where we as women, we're being told that we're not enough, right? We're not enough in all these different spaces that we want to get into, even though we have the qualifications, even though we have, I mean, I think about women who are mothers, especially in this time, and they're full-time mom, 2 or 3 kids, and they're full-time employee, and they're full-time, you know, developing their brand and promoting their brand. And it's like, how are you doing it, right? And I think that in itself, it denounces the fact that women can't do certain things. Like, do you understand the load that we take on every single day, right? And us getting into a space where we're like, listen to me, I am enough, right? I am enough. But I think not only saying that you're enough to do whatever it is that you want to do, but to have the support of other women around you. As you said with Carol, that was great. You know, where's that voice? Because we all have that little inner voice that always tells us not to do something. It's very seldom that inner voice go, yes, go ahead, you got this, right?
Yeah.
Most of the times need an environment to be able to say, forget that. Listen to this. Go ahead. You can do this. You're gonna be nervous. You know, you're gonna feel this way, but you've done the hardest part, which is to take the first step.
Yes.
Right? To really put yourself out there. And I think for most women, that's sometimes the most difficult part.
Oh, yes. And I want to add too, it just occurred to me that one thing that I think has helped me a lot with the confidence in kind of overcoming imposter syndrome. And again, not that I don't have it, but just being able to override it with a different voice. Yeah. Has been, I used to do triathlons, and I learned how to swim at the age of 37. And then I did many half Ironmans, and then eventually I did an Ironman race. And I was never someone who grew up athletic. So for me, this was a big accomplishment. And that experience, this idea of pushing past, I mean, gigantic fears like open water swimming terrified me as someone who couldn't swim until I was 37. And so I had to swim 2.4 miles in the ocean, and I did. So my point is that ability to push past that fear, then I bring that into other areas like public speaking, or, I mean, I've done a whole host of things I've never done before, and I've just done them scared, but I've done them. So I've used that understanding of what it feels like to do something I'm scared to do, and I've brought it to the new thing that I'm doing. So I'm not suggesting anybody do an Ironman or swim 2.4 miles in the ocean. What I am suggesting is find that thing that you are good at, that you have pushed past lots of obstacles to do. It could be being a parent. That's challenging. It could be that you're very good at sewing. It could be that you're good at, maybe you're great at public speaking, whatever it is. Use the knowledge of that thing you're good at and that experience and the confidence that gives you, and try to transfer that to the having a bigger voice, speaking up more, how imposter syndrome plays into that and keeps you from doing it, bring those other experiences of confidence over to that, because I think it does translate, right? It's in you. You just have to bring it up and be able to, use that to push past whatever that fear is and that imposter syndrome that's telling you can't do it. You know you can do it. Frankly, anybody can do an Ironman. I know that sounds crazy, but listen,
I don't think I can.
I've stood at the finish line of an Ironman, and I've seen people I will just say that I was passed in the race by an 80-year-old man. I'm just going to say that. So I know for a fact, literally anybody can do an Ironman. The reason you don't know that is because you haven't tried. Maybe you don't want to, and that's okay. But I've seen it. So my point is that imposter syndrome can still exist and you can still do things. You just have to draw on some other experience that lets you know you can do it and have a voice.
I love that. I never actually thought about doing that, like looking at my strengths and some of the things that I've done within it without, doing it scared anyway, and transferring that to the things that I want to do that I'm skeptical and scared about. So I like that. I think more than anything from this conversation, I hope that audience and everyone that's listening can take that away from that part of the conversation is just find your strength, find what you've looked at fear and said, no, I'm doing this anyway, and you did it, and transfer that to other parts of your life, especially when it comes to your business, especially when it comes to the work environment, and really speaking up for those things that are important to you. And of course, when I say I'm always mindful when we say challenge the status quo, and when we hear that, it's like, oh, you're trying to be, change the way the world is by bringing down someone else. It's like, no, there's certain things, and especially women walking into the workforce, which it wasn't built for us. We know that, right? And even when I talk about with my clients about what they wear, the dress codes weren't created for women by women. We weren't in the workforce. We could not decide, okay, I'm a woman and this is a woman's body and this is the way you should dress it, right? It was the males within, because they were in the workforce. They determined what that professional outfit was. And so we kind of like, we're in the workplace and it's like told, this is what to wear. Whereas the work that I do, it's like telling my clients, okay, you're an individual. You determine what your personal style is. You determine what your messaging. You cannot look like everyone in your space, because then you're not differentiating yourself and you're not giving yourself scope to really step out. Because I think sometimes that's what it happens when we wear these invisible wardrobe, as I call it, because we're dressed the same thing as everyone else. We lose those moments to really speak on things. We lose the moments to have the confidence to negotiate for ourselves. We lose the moments where we can say women's voices are important, right? And where we can really say, okay, I realize that what Susan just said is important, right? It's not only I get where she's coming from, but it also changes the feel for every woman within the space. And so I am going to speak up. I am going to support her, right? So it's not just about us going and looking at different areas that, oh, let's pick on this, but changing it and putting women on an equal footing where we feel supported, where we feel as though we're being heard, where we not feel as though where we're being heard, right? It's not about feeling, it's where we're being heard, right? Where we're being supported and having the confidence to step into those spaces. So I wanted to talk about, like, because we're talking about all these different things that women can do, and we're talking about the impact. One of the things I like, because as my brand says, style to impact. It's all about women getting into spaces and really making an impact, because we can talk the talk, but we really need to walk the walk. We really need to get into those spaces. How do you see it? Like, what are some of the spaces that you've been in, and how can women use their voices to make the impact in those spaces?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I would say, well, I mean, for example, if you look at, it's changing a little bit, but if you look at some of the bigger conferences, so for example, if you want to be a speaker, some of the bigger conferences are still mostly male speakers. So I think, if you're applying to speak at these, I mean, probably the selection committee is largely men as well. And so it's a little bit challenging, but at the same time, I would say the more women who begin to want to put their voice out there and become speakers. And again, I understand speaking can be a little scary, but there's no better way to truly, literally and figuratively have a voice than to do speaking, get your message out there, it builds confidence. But the more women who apply to speak at these conferences, the more opportunities are going to happen. And then we will all start to see more women on stages, and then conferences will recognize that they need to have more women on stages. So obviously there's a lot of layers to that and a lot of things that have to change, but that is one of the areas where I think can model more women literally having a voice, right? By actually using their voice to speak. Also, I think anything where you can have a voice, and I'm saying it in a literal and a figurative sense, but where you're literally using your voice to share your expertise, whether it looks like doing it on a stage, doing it in a podcast interview, and a live like this, having your own podcast, going and just talking to a group of school children. It doesn't matter what it is, but literally using your voice. There's something about articulating whatever it is. Again, doesn't matter what the topic is, but articulating something to other people. You're making a connection with people. Obviously, if you're a woman doing that, you are not only raising your own voice, but you're also raising the voice of all women, right? And so I think finding opportunities like that can be so empowering and also powerful for just raising the visibility of all women. And we know that when women bring their ideas to all spaces, things improve for all of us. Like, for example, with Kamala Harris being the vice president, because women have a unique way of looking at things, it changes how systems work when we bring our voices to those systems. So I would challenge everybody in your audience. Again, you don't have to want to speak at a conference of 600 people. But what if you just look for opportunities to be interviewed on someone's podcast? Or what if you look for things like this where you can be interviewed on a LinkedIn Live? Or here's an idea. Just go on LinkedIn and do your own recorded video and post it on your LinkedIn profile. It doesn't even have to be anything super fancy, but literally use your voice to have a voice and get your ideas out there, because there's nothing as connecting as talking in this way to an audience, whoever that audience is. Again, school children, moms, business professionals. Doesn't matter what your area of expertise is. I think I just listened. Here's a really great example. So it might be a little bit of a strange example, but I just, I can't remember how I heard about this, but there's a book that came out recently called What Happened to You? And it's written by a psychologist and Oprah Winfrey. And I saw that this book was being released, but I think I heard about it because I listened to Dax Shepard's podcast, Armchair Expert. They asked Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard, who are married, to conduct an interview with the author, the psychologist, and Oprah, which I just watched, because if you bought the book, you got access to attend the interview.
Okay.
But I love that idea of, so Dax Shepard and Kristen Bell are actors, and one of them has a podcast, but they use their voices to champion this idea of the book is about childhood trauma, like what happened to you, like, because literally something happened to every one of us. So using their voices to champion something like that, which is complete departure from, their normal areas. They're not pretending to be experts, but they are using their voices to champion this. So, obviously they're celebrities. That's how they got the opportunity. But what could you do, audience, people watching this, what could you do within your own sphere to get your voice out there? What cause could you champion? What is it you care about to speak about? It could be education. It could be, fashion. It could be, again, I don't know why I'm saying sewing, because I'm not a sewer, but sewing. It could be
maybe you're thinking of doing some sewing.
Maybe I am. It could be literally anything, but you could use your voice in that way. And it doesn't have to be necessarily some topic that is so earth shattering and, world changing. But I can guarantee you that by using your voice, you are going to change someone. And if anything, you will change yourself, because you empower yourself when you speak up, literally speak up.
Yes, that's it. You empower yourself when you speak up.
Yes.
And using your voice to champion the things that are important to you.
Yes.
I think that's the message, that's the direction that we should be going in as women, to really express and talk about the things that are important to us,
Yes.
and show up in a space that uplifts each other, to really have that, as I talk about that sisterhood, because it's not just about me expressing my opinions, but having the support of other women, sharing your story as well, right? Your
Oh,
story can
yes.
connect with someone that can help someone. These conversations that I plan on having, every Monday, it's conversations that there may be something that you can take away from it, right? There may be something that you may be struggling with that you're like, okay, feel like I can do a lot more, right? Or I feel as though like I am doing enough, right? Despite what anyone else is saying to me, that I'm really showing up for myself, because that's the most important thing. I think that's where it starts. It starts about showing up for yourself. And once you show up for yourself, then obviously it's a domino effect. You show up
Yes.
for yourself, it means that you're able to make certain changes that that you look at and think that that's not right, and you, at the same time, there are other women that's looking at you going, oh wow, if she can do that, I can do that as well, right?
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
what we
Absolutely.
want. We want to have that space where we are showing up for each other, we're supporting each other, and we're uplifting each other. And I'm an action person. Like I don't support the soapbox
Right.
conversations where we talk, 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 but
Right.
that when it comes to, okay, so we are seeking 200 women to sign this petition. It's going to be public. Your name is going to be published to change, rights in the workplace for women. And it's like, I kind of sort of said that I support it, but I don't want to make my name public that I support
Right.
it. Like, I get that it's not always easy, especially when you run a business and you're looking for clients. I'm sure there are persons that's listening to this conversation and be like, okay. But I think there's a bigger picture beyond that, and being able to connect with the people that really need it, and see the work that I want to do, and see the importance of, I don't want to be your stylist, your ordinary stylist. I'm not about putting you in pretty clothing and that's it. But it's about giving women the power that they need.
Yes.
Right? Because we don't, just working from with my clients, things that I've discovered, that there's so much attached to what we wear.
Yes.
There's so much attached to what we wear, from our confidence to the way we speak and why we're wearing certain things, right? It's like, no, I don't like yellow, but why are you wearing yellow? Oh, because someone in my past told me yellow made me look better, but you hate the color, right? So it's
Right.
about women being able to get the confidence to shed some of the negatives or some of the things that have been holding them back from being their most authentic selves, and having the voice to speak up on things that matter. Because as you said, when we speak up, that's how we change the narrative. That's how we
Yes.
change how society views us. So one of the things that I've come to realize, well, actually I shouldn't say come to realize, that I've done a lot more over the last, I would say, 6 months, because I always thought that, I can do things that I want to do on my own. I don't necessarily have to read the work of anyone else. I can figure this out. But what I've realized is that once I increased or expand my, literally, like, the novels and the books and the authors that I read, it changed who I am.
Oh, yes.
And it improved who I am. Like, my knowledge base is so much more different in the vast.
Yes.
I read like every single thing now, and it's like, wow, what I wanted to know, because books helped me, right?
Yeah.
And what I wanted to know from you, like, what is your favorite book to read? Like, we're sharing with our audience, because I think once we expand
Mm.
our knowledge as well, we can see the possibilities of doing certain things. And I think that's, what's your favorite book? What book recommendation would you leave with the audience? I think that's something that I want to leave with my audience as well. It's like, go expand your knowledge using this book. So I'm sure, I know you're an avid reader, so I know
Yes.
there's a lot of books on your shelf. So what's your best read?
Okay, so first you need to know that I I have a little bit of a book problem in that I'm always reading at least 10 books at once. And so I never like I don't finish one and then go to the next. They're always in some stage of being read. So
Okay, I thought I was weird to do that as well.
I have the attention span of a gnat. So I'll be in the mood for one thing. And I'm like, oh, I'm not really in the mood for that anymore. Let me switch to this type of thing, right? So I'm reading fiction, nonfiction, self-help, all this stuff. But, and this is not a business book, but this is my favorite book that I've ever read. It's Wild by Cheryl Strayed. And there was a movie, but I mean, the movie was fine. The book was far and away better, so much better. Because as you know, when you read, you kind of immerse into the story and you visualize how it looks and you visualize the actions they're taking and the scenery they're describing. And it's all what you create in your mind. And so it's much more personal. I think it's a much more personal experience when you read a book versus seeing the movie version. So
yeah.
Movie's fine. Read the book first, please. But the reason why I like that book is because, number one, I'm sort of a psychology buff. Not that I have any training in it, but I'm interested in it, I think, because of my background in childhood trauma. So I like this book because it's the experience. It's based on the author's true story, and it's her experience kind of moving through trauma of her mother dying, and she was a drug addict at one point, and then she ends up, for whatever reason, going on this literal and figurative journey of walking the Pacific Crest Trail, which was 1,000-something miles. Wow. And sort of not just discovering things along the way, but discovering things along the way inside, right? And so working through her issues. And I just love that idea of sort of doing something challenging that she wasn't sure she could do. Of course, I love that. You know, she did it not having really much information or even the right equipment. She did it with all this sort of quote unquote baggage, like figurative baggage of her whole life and all this stuff on her and her mother's death and whatnot. And I love seeing the journey of that. Now, I think the other thing I love about that is that's her personal story that she shared. That is why you mentioned telling your story. That's why it's so important to share your story, because, and I don't mean you have to go out there and tell all your personal business, but don't be afraid to bring in, I told you some personal things about me.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to bring those things in when you are using your voice, because your story, although it's personal to you, will have some universal element. My story of having done the Ironman, maybe nobody else in the audience has done an Ironman, but maybe somebody else in the audience did something, like maybe they were terrified to have a baby and they're like, you know what, I really want a baby, but I'm so scared. And then they did it anyway, right? Yeah. So there's some universal component of your story that the audience is going to relate to. Might not be the exact same experience, but they're going to connect to that. That is how you make an impact in the world. That is how you empower other women. And that is how you help them build confidence, is by sharing your story, whatever that story might be. So I just love the book Wild, because I cried 2 times in that book. One of the times was when it ended, I cried. Oh. But then I also, which I cried in the middle of it because I don't want to give it away, but definitely read the book. I just love that it's a very personal story about a journey, and it's got so many things wrapped into it, figuratively and literally, that just really can inspire this idea of doing something scary and having a voice.
Oh, thank you very much for sharing that, Diane. I knew you were going to have some book men because I've never actually heard of it. So it's like
Oh, you
something
gotta read it.
completely different, but at the same time empowering and uplifting with a great story and
Oh,
message behind it. So thank you very much
wonderful.
for
Yes.
sharing that. This has been a fantastic conversation. I I feel so great, like just being able to get in these spaces and have this conversation, just sharing this conversation with you in terms of, the power of women voices and how we can speak up to change the narratives around us. And not just for ourselves, but those that, we interact with. So thank you very much for
Yeah, you're welcome.
sharing and being a part of my first official LinkedIn Live for Women Making an Impact. I am super honored to have you. Is there anything that you want to leave with the audience as we close out?
Yes, I would like to say, as you're thinking about having a voice, how you can have bigger impact, how you can change the narrative, I would encourage you, if I may, I want to share this free download at speakingyourbrand.com/guide. And that's a link to our Speaking Your Brand Thought Leadership Workbook, because you don't have to want to, again, speak on stage, but having an understanding of what your thought leadership message is going to help you to have confidence, to feel powerful, to make an impact, and to overcome that imposter syndrome. So go to that speakingyourbrand.com/guide. It's a free workbook. You can work through it at your own pace and just sort of get your ideas together about what your thought leadership message could be to put out there to the world so that you can have the kind of impact that you want to have. And along the way, not only empower yourself, but empower other women.
Oh, thank you very much, Diane. That's
Yeah, you're
wonderful.
welcome.
We will definitely drop the link
Okay,
to that guide in the
good.
comments in the chat so that you can go ahead and download that. But
Great.
thank you very much to everyone that tuned in and watched with us live.
Yes.
And for those of you who are watching the replay, I am honored and privileged that you took the time to spend this time with us, to be a part of the conversation, to be active in the comments as well. I see all your comments. I will definitely ensure that we can respond to all of
Oh,
those.
yes. I can't wait to see them.
So thank you very much, Diane, for joining me as
You're
well. And thank you
welcome.
very much to the audience.
Yes.
This is us signing out. Have a great one, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.